to the Punchline. I'm your comic strip critic. Apparently I've been trying to get in touch with my feminine side on the show recently. Of the past 3 episodes I've done, 2 have featured female leads, Between Friends focused on middle-aged women, and Luann revolved around high school antics. I'm glad to shine a light on these strips because, like so many other creative industries, the majority of established cartooning talent lies with the men. So the chance to get to take a look at a comic that comes from a different perspective is a very welcome opportunity. But there's another female-focused strip that I've wanted to talk about for some time. And fortunately, this one actually runs in my local newspaper, so I already know a fair bit about it before even beginning. And it should be noted that this comic strip isn't just focused on women, it includes other themes as well, such as motherhood and even religion. So what is this mystery comic strip? You're such a killjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to the Pajama Diaries. This is a very young comic, having only made its debut in 2006 under the pen, or more accurately under the stylus, of Terry Levenson. And while the year that Twitter first launched and Casino Royale was in theaters might seem like a long time ago, remember, we're talking about a medium that still updates a comic that's been around since 1897. A comic that debuted in 2006 is practically still in the cradle. And yet, regardless of the fact that it's so young, the Pajama Diaries has been nominated for one of this year's Reuben Awards. So what makes the strip so award-worthy? The difficult thing when looking at this comic is deciding what exactly to talk about, because it's a very multifaceted strip. Yes, the main character, Jill Kaplan, is a woman, but the strip also highlights the fact that she's a mother of 2 preteen girls, Jess and Amy. She's a work-from-home freelance graphic designer, she participates actively in her Jewish faith, and most shockingly of all, she enjoys a healthy romantic life with her husband Rob. Okay, when I say it like that, it sounds like a very obvious moment. You're sitting there and you're saying to yourself, well duh, of course, why wouldn't they? But remember, this is the same medium where cartoonists aren't allowed to say, this sucks, because too many people find that to be offensive and vulgar. I'm not kidding about that. It's one of the reasons why I love Pearls Before Swine so much. Watching Stefan Passis run circles around cartooning censors is immensely satisfying. So you can imagine my surprise when 2 characters are very clearly being intimate with each other. I guess what I find most surprising about it is the way in which it's portrayed. For example, the use of the black space and the flaming eyes are fantastic. It's such a great visual. I love it. Okay, let's rephrase that. I love the panel layout and the use of exaggerated artwork on display here. I also really like the cross-eyed look that Jill gets on her face when she's flustered. It's a very Kathy Guys-White sort of thing to see. The 1,000-yard stare on Jess's face in the first panel is pretty funny too. But do you see the point I'm trying to make here? I was genuinely and pleasantly surprised that Pajama Diaries Syndicate, King Features, gave this the green light. It's risque, but it's also hilarious, and I'm sure it's relatable to a number of readers, both young and old. And sometimes what you see at first isn't what's actually going on. Are we getting complacent? Nah. How's the artwork in the comic? Well, I enjoy it a lot. The character design is varied, unique, and very clean. And on occasion, the Pajama Diaries finds a way to play with format. For example, other comics are displayed in chart form, or a diagram, or some other oddity, which can actually be pretty fun to read. And while it's not the only comic to do so, sometimes everything just goes sideways. It's a lot easier to read this when you can just turn the newspaper page, isn't it? Alright, everybody with me now so we can read this. Oh, I'm sure that's fine. And like Zitz and Leo before it, Pajama Diaries sometimes uses artwork in place of dialogue, which by now is a surefire way to get on my good side, because it's a perfect example of using the unique aspects of the medium of cartooning to its advantage. I also mentioned that the Pajama Diaries is a strip about motherhood and Judaism, and both of those themes are ones that I've never really seen in the comics page, except for motherhood and Sally Forth to an extent, and perhaps also Baby Blues. But Judaism? I can't recall another comic that covers that territory. And there's a perfect storyline that manages to take both of those themes and combine them. For a very large part of 2012 and 2013, there was a recurring storyline focusing on Amy's Bat Mitzvah. The whole thing is covered, from initial planning to scheduling to ironing out problems to the actual mitzvah itself, and finally ending with the aftermath. Having a Protestant background and very little opportunity to attend a mitzvah myself, I can't speak with authority as to how accurate this is, but since Terry Levenson herself is Jewish, I think it's safe to say that she knows what she's talking about. Since it's such a long story, I won't be able to give my usual detailed recap like I do in most episodes, but there's no reason that we can't take a look at some of the strips at random from the collection, so this is the Pajama Diaries and the Bat-Zilla saga.
Can you believe Amy turns 12 next month? Only a year away from her Bat Mitzvah. So I started gathering a few ideas, just a few. Meet file folder number 1.
And so it begins.
Ugh! So stupid! I hate Hebrew. I take it your lesson didn't go so well. I'll never learn this stuff in time. Aim, you've got 5 months. You'll get it. Anyway, if I could do it, so can you. Why? Were you bad at Hebrew? Let's just say we were 1 session shy of a walkie-talkie and an earpiece.
An earpiece? In the 1980s? That's not exactly what I would think of as subtle. I like this particular comic because of the extra detail put into the background. Glad to see the extra effort made on this from time to time when the comic calls for it. Some comics prefer to use a whole lot of background details all the time, and others prefer to keep things plain simple and focus on the foreground characters. Either way's fine, it just depends on what works for the individual comic. Pajama Diaries falls into the latter category, and every once in a while keeps things visually interesting with the occasional background sketch like this.
Okay, we've ordered flowers, assembled gift bags, did a final head count, made the seating plan, and confirmed with the DJ, caterer, and photographer. Anything else?
Did you write your speech?
I'll be in seclusion for 72 hours.
See you Saturday.
Jill, look who I brought. Amy? Future Amy. She's living proof that the Bat Mitzvah is worth all the time, stress, and expense. The event boosted her confidence and made her a real go-getter. Really? Nah, all your nagging to apply myself finally kicked in. Either way, time well spent.
Okay, so Jill is hallucinatory. I'll call the local asylum and book her a room. Maybe she can stay in a wing with Calvin. In the end, though, the mitzvah goes off without any issues. This is a nice splash panel to cap off the storyline with. It seems bigger and more epic in scope, so it has a lot more of an impact than a regular 4-panel strip would. It's a way to capture that one important moment in time very effectively, like a photograph. Well, it's over.
Yes.
You okay?
I mean, the surface was lovely, and Amy did beautifully. It was everything I could wish for. But the party...
Why? It went well.
It was great. Everyone enjoyed. I just feel like a big sucker for spending a small fortune. We didn't need all that glitz.
So we'll take a lesson from this and pare things down for Jess.
Poor girl. Even her celebrations are secondhand.
So that wraps up Amy's Bat Mitzvah, and I really enjoyed it. It takes its time being told, it's pretty funny, and it's a window into a lifestyle that I very much doubt I'll ever be a part of. Pajama Diaries includes themes of motherhood, Judaism, and romance. But just like how a person isn't defined by one single trait, none of these aspects singularly defines the strip. I mean, I'm none of those things, and I still enjoy cracking open the comics section in my newspaper to read this. So between the humor, artwork, writing, and overall themes, it's pretty easy to see why the Pajama Diaries was nominated for a Reuben. Will it win the award? Well, my Reuben analysis videos are coming up right around the corner, so we'll get to that next time. Actually, given how bold of a move it is, I do sometimes wonder if Terry Levenson's ever received any complaints regarding some of the comic's more adult themes.
Well, honestly, that's usually when I get the least complaints and I get the most compliments. It's kind of counterintuitive, but I get complaints more about small little pesty things like grammar or just little things I wouldn't even normally think about. But when it comes to like the more suggestive stuff, I really don't. And even in the beginning, I got maybe a few, and I think some editors got some complaints to the papers, but I think as people got used to the strip right away, it sort of raised their expectations, and then I've actually taken down the blatancy on these strips. So so in a way, I think I raised the expectations, then it's sort of minimalized it a bit. So it's kind of strange, but no, I think those are usually the reader favorites.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Terry Levenson to the Punchline. Thank you for so much for coming on. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here.
You actually had a trip over to Israel earlier this year. How was that?
It was fantastic. I've made some great new friends who I'll be seeing tomorrow, actually, and the experience itself was, there are no words. It was fantastic.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your life before you started working on the Pajama Diaries. I know that you had another strip with King Features for a while before you did the Pajama Diaries. How did you, just tell us about your life. How did you get into cartooning?
My gosh. Well, I've always loved cartoons ever since I was a little kid. I used to steal my brother's comic book collection. I'm not sure why he had one and I didn't, but maybe it became secondhand. And I used to just devour them, and then I started adding like my own dialogue bubbles and even sort of rearranging the Archie women's wardrobes. It was odd, but but then I started really getting into it more as I got into high school and college, and I was an illustration major, and I kind of used cartooning as an art form, and my work started getting more and more cartoony as I went along, and I also love storytelling, and I've written short stories in my life too, just especially when I was a kid, and I think it was just a really good marriage of the two, so it just kind of came naturally. So that's how I started, and then I'm also kind of a very ambitious person and very stubborn, so I just kept pushing and pushing.
You're going to go, and you're going all the way.
Absolutely, and yeah, I sometimes I still look back and think, how did I do that? I'm a lot more tired now. I don't know how I did that.
One thing that I've always found kind of interesting about the Pajama Diaries, and a couple other comics too, is I know that the characters of the Pajama Diaries are actually, physically at least, modeled off of your family. I had the chance to briefly meet them at a brunch last November.
Right.
Now, physically they're similar,
yeah.
But when it comes to personalities and how they're characterized, how well does that match up?
You know what? It's funny because this is, I don't know how this happened with all the characters, but I really tried to model the characters closely on my family. Of course, my kids were so much younger when I started this. They were practically babies. So I kind of like to say, because this is Jill's outlook, the mother's outlook, it's sort of her view on things. So the personalities of the children didn't really develop until later. They were, I like to say, they were kind of like just blobs there. And they were sort of her props in a way. But obviously they've developed and gotten personalities of their own. They've sort of taken off in different directions than my own kids. And it's almost just sort of this organic thing where you develop these characters and they're almost like children. Like you can raise them to a certain point, but they kind of go off in their own direction. And even the adult characters are kind of the same way. Like Jill's, she's much more, I think, neurotic and even more outgoing and direct in the comic strip than I am in real life. And my husband is much more gregarious in person. He's a talker, and Rob is definitely not that way on paper.
Rob's
he's more the
very
straight
laid back,
man.
yeah.
He's more the straight man, the laid back guy. He sort of lets Jill sort of take the spotlight. And the kids, I think ways that they're similar, just not just physically. Amy, the older one, is she's very outspoken, and she's a little more demanding, more of the, you know, sort of first child type A kind of personality, and then Jess is the more laid back one, and just more easygoing one, and that's where they're very similar. I think ways they differ. Amy, the older child, again, is let's see, I think she's a little more tomboyish, and I don't know if that's my own projection on her. Whereas my daughter Molly is, she's much more of a girly girl, and she's into dancing and into like cheerleading and things like that. And I don't think Amy's quite that way. And Jess, my daughter Nikki, who Jess is modeled after, she's a personality and a half. She's very funny. She's very goofy, and I think sort of in the same way that Rob lets Jill kind of shine, I think Jess does that with Amy, like sort of takes a step back. And I think that's because Amy, she's the older one, so I showcase her milestones first in the strip.
And so Jess gets all the hand-me-down knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
This is always something that I always find fascinating to watch. Jeff McDowell, who does Mutts, was a big fan of Peanuts growing up, and Charles Schultz even said that Mutts was a great comic strip. Who were your biggest influences when you were starting off in Pajama Diaries?
Starting off, let's see. It was kind of a muddle of different things. I don't think there was one particular creator per se. I know I was heavily influenced in college by Linda Barry, and I probably subconsciously took away like the diary idea from her, and I've just always liked that format, the intermix of narrative and dialogue. Let's see. Claire Bretéché is another one. I read a lot of her probably after college and loved her. I mean, I'm a big Charles Schultz fan myself. I grew up, you know, basically drawing Snoopy and Woodstock on everything I could get my hands on. And I liked other things. I liked Bloom County. I don't know, it's such a hodgepodge. I'm such a lover of all different kinds of comics all over the board. So I think just subconsciously everything kind of got in there, but I was also doing a lot of reading of my own and experiencing of my own. Like I was reading a lot of books on like the challenges of modern motherhood. There were a lot of articles and mom blogs coming out at the time, and it was, I was deliberately trying to get some ideas for a new strip, and that sort of came at the right time, and I was experiencing it, having little kids of my own, so.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I like about it so much, that explores these themes that no other comics really do. It's one of the great unique things about the comic.
Thanks.
Now there are a couple of comics that I've seen that I imagine if I were your daughter I would be mortified by. Are they as mortified as I imagine they are sometimes?
My daughter is just mortified in general all the time. No, she's a good sport. You know, my kids were so young when I started it that's all they know, and I try not to use anything verbatim. I just try and use more general experiences of anything. Sometimes a situation will spark something, but I'll usually take it in a different direction. So I think the only thing that maybe mortifies my daughter now, looking back, although it didn't at the time, was when Jill took Amy to get her first training bra. And now it's documented in my book, so she can't escape that.
That's never going away now.
No.
Okay. Actually, I don't think I've seen that one. I'm going to have to hunt it down, now that you mention it.
A while ago.
On the subject of your daughter's reactions and other people's reactions, what's the most noteworthy reaction that you've gotten to the comic, positive or negative, from a fan?
They kind of blur together. I'm trying to think. I don't know if there's anything particularly noteworthy. I'll get little nitpicky things sometimes, but the one thing I love is if I'm just out with friends or something and I meet someone through them and they have no idea what I do, and then when they find out that I write the comic strip and they're readers of it, I get that great reaction like, oh my God! And then they sort of go into like shock for about a minute, trying to figure out how to react to that whole thing, and then they like kind of cringe like I'm a psychiatrist ready to analyze them at any given moment.
They're afraid of saying something that's going to go in the comics.
Exactly. It's great.
Could you share some exclusive tidbits, something else that hasn't been revealed anywhere else before that I can get an exclusive on?
Oh boy. Okay, I'll give you one little tidbit. To be honest, because this is one area of my life where I don't plan ahead, and I just sort of let the strip unfold, and sometimes it surprises myself. So I really don't know what's happening down the road all the time. But there is one deliberate thing that I have in mind, and that has to do with the side character Nancy's baby. And there's going to be something kind of developing down the road after she has the baby.
Okay, so that's not for a while. So
not for a while,
but it's
though.
something
It could actually be years. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad to hear things are playing out that long. It means that the comic's not going away anytime soon.
Well, I hope not.
Good. Now, I was talking about themes a little while ago. One of the things that I've always found very fascinating about the Pajama Diaries is that it's, to my knowledge, it's the only comic strip I found that has Jewish themes in it. It focuses on that these characters are Jewish and they celebrate Jewish holidays, Hanukkah and Bat Mitzvahs. What's that experience been like? Have you gotten any sort of outreach from people on that?
I do. I get a lot of it. Although I just have to specify that it's not the only Jewish themed strip.
Okay.
There is one that Terry Levenson does called Edge City, and that's probably even more Jewish than mine is. But I don't think it runs in our local paper. But it's a good strip. You should look it up. It's and Terry Leven's a fantastic artist and a really funny person.
Okay.
But as far as mine goes, I get a lot of feedback. That's probably the one area where I get the most, and it's generally good. It's generally very good, and I get it from both people in the Jewish community and people who are not in the Jewish community. I get it from all over. People tend to like seeing something different in the comics as far as that's concerned. And when I started running the Bat Mitzvah storyline I think I actually started running it 2 years ago, I started getting a lot of wonderful feedback, especially people going through the same kind of situation.
Right.
So it was nice. And actually it helped me too as I wrote the strip, because I was projecting forward. I write the strip about 4 to 5 months in advance. So even though I was going through my own experience of planning my daughter's Bat Mitzvah, I had to write about the actual date, 4 months ahead of time.
Right.
So I was, a lot of it I had to do a lot of research, and getting feedback from readers helped a lot as well.
They would offer up their suggestions, their anecdotes about what had happened that
Yeah.
you would take into account then?
Sometimes, yeah. People would give me exactly like anecdotes, funny situations, or just commiserating a bit, like, I know what you're going through, and this is what happened, and also just I had friends who've had kids who've been through the process before, so they were a good source as well.
Okay. Something else that I saw on your FAQ on your website is that Pajama Diaries is syndicated internationally, correct?
Correct.
What were some of the other countries that it runs in? Because Wikipedia doesn't carry that, and I didn't see that on your website. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, maybe I should update Wikipedia. Should take a look. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I'm not as up on it as I should be. I think it runs in Lisbon and in India somewhere, and I know it runs in South Africa because I actually get quite a lot of feedback from there. And there are definitely other places I can't think offhand.
Is it syndicated in Israel by chance?
It's not, but I'm working on it.
You really should.
I know. I actually I would love to see that. I am working on it. I'm actually in contact with someone
Fantastic.
from there, so we'll see.
All right, well, best of luck for that.
Thank you.
And I also know that you used to do some work, or you still do some work. Again, this is something that was a little unclear for the American Greetings card company.
Right.
How did that come about, and how was it trying to balance that and a comic strip at the same time?
Oh, that was really, really, really hard at first. My gosh, I almost want to block it out because it was that hard. But I started working for American Greetings about 20 years ago, right out of college, and I moved to Cleveland to work there. That's where they're headquartered, and so I worked there full time for about 10 years, and there was a lot of fun. I write humorous cards. I used to write and illustrate humorous cards for American Greetings, and now as when I got syndicated, I was doing kind of a juggling act with both. By then, I was part-time at American Greetings because I also had my kids, so I was going part-time anyway. So I think by the time I started the strip, I was working part-time at home for American Greetings, and then I was writing the strip full-time. So I was working nights and weekends, and my full-time job with a baby and a toddler on top of it, and no sleep. And luckily, gradually it worked out. I think as the years progressed, the strip became my full-time job, and American Greetings, I now have a contract where it's just maybe about once a week or so, and it's lovely. It works out great, and I don't work weekends or nights anymore if I can help it. Well, I do, but it's more for fun than anything.
The nights and weekends are for Pajama Diaries. Right?
Well, no. I mean, I don't really do I don't write my strip or American Greetings on nights and weekends per se, but I'll do other things, like I'll catch up on emails, or I'll I do a lot of presentations and speaking engagements, so I'll work on those. And actually, that's become more of the side job, but it's fun. It's I don't really consider it work, so it's nice.
Okay. You just mentioned speaking engagements. Do you have something coming up anytime soon if somebody wants to meet you in public?
Yeah, I have a big one coming up in September. Okay. I'm going to the Kenosha Festival of Cartooning.
Oh, right.
And I'm a speaker there, so I'm very excited. I'm working on my presentation right now. It's brand new, so that's keeping me busy. Yeah.
Now, I know that a couple other people are appearing there. I believe Norm Fiuti, who does retail and Gil stopped running, sadly. Yeah. He's going to be there, and I'm trying to remember.
He spoke last year, I think.
Spoke last year?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, or the year before, one of those years. But.
And who else is going to be there this year? Do you know off the top of your head?
Let's see. Lincoln Pierce is.
Big Nate.
Todd Clark, who does Lola. Oh my gosh, I should know this. I'm trying to remember.
We'll put a link to the website on the screen. Go check it out.
I apologize to the other speakers. I'm blanking out right now.
No.
But yeah, that festival is becoming pretty huge. And
I also know Tom Racine of Tall Tale Radio is going to be there. I know he'll be there.
Yes, that's right.
Which is a podcast you should check out. He does interviews with cartoonists on a weekly basis, I believe. He's taking a hiatus. He's taking a hiatus right now, but there's like 150 podcasts you can go back and listen to. So you've got some stuff to burn through.
Right.
And you mentioned some of your early influences early on when you were looking at when you were creating the Pajama Diaries, Charles Schulz and some other people. Who are the ones that you're really enjoying reading now, that you have a sort of a different perspective on things?
Now, it's so hard because I don't have as much time to read anymore. It's a strange twist of fate, but let's see. I mainly read those from my own syndicate because I get the Daily Ink daily updates. So I just throw everybody and their brother on there and sister, and there's it's hard to say which are my favorites because I love comics, and there's so many really solid ones out there. Actually, there should be more that are put out there, I think, too. But especially new artists, I think there's some fantastic
There's
ones.
some really good new talent coming up these days. Mark Tutuli, Norm Fiuti, Dana Simpson.
Yeah, I love Norm. Actually, one strip I think doesn't get enough press, and or not press, but I should say maybe one that I love, and she's a friend of mine, is Sandra Bell Lundy's Between Friends.
Right.
I'm a big fan of hers, and it's a really good, solid strip, and I know it's geared more toward women, but it's it's very, very good.
No, I did an episode on that an episode or two ago, and I enjoyed it. I recommended people go check it out. So there you go. You need some more love. Go read between friends. Go read between friends. Now, you actually touched on this earlier, but you really haven't received, like you said, many complaints at all from your readers, at least initially, regarding some of the adult content between Jill and Rob, which I was a little surprised by at first, because I can't think of many other comics that are so frank in the fact that, yes, this is a married couple and they're still intimate. But now, you said you haven't had any real backlash from readers. How nervous was King Features initially?
Oh my gosh, that's a whole other story in of itself. King Features, well, okay, let me just backtrack, because at the time I had a different editor, Jake Kennedy at King Features, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. And he's the one who syndicated me. He's the one who took me on. And in my submission, I think I had a couple of those type of more suggestive strips. So because it started out that way, it was almost part of the strip. It was almost part of how they were marketing it. And so when we developed the sales kit, it had a couple of those in it, and they were pretty blatant. I mean, I don't do anything nearly as blatant. I'm actually embarrassed about them myself now, about some of them.
It happens in the early days, yeah. You look back and cringe and terror.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And so, yeah, it's funny. I'll look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? And but because it was marketed early on as, as pushing the envelope, they were fully supportive of that. And in fact, I think Jay kind of encouraged it to an extent. It's not like I'm friendly with Greg Walker, who does High and Lois, and I think the one thing he always comes up to me and says is, "How do you get away with that?" And I just say it's because that's how it was not marketed, but that's how it was introduced from the beginning. So the expectation was always there. So that's why I can get away with it more.
Okay.
It's not like some of the other comics that have married couples that were maybe developed decades ago or something that you just wouldn't have the same expectation.
Right, something from the older days like Beetle Bailey or High and Lois.
Right.
Okay. Now, Pajama Diaries has been nominated for a Reuben Award this spring.
Yay!
In San Diego. How did that come about? How did you first hear about that?
That was a great moment. I was actually on vacation visiting my mom in Florida with my family, and so that was in March, not long ago. And I didn't even know what I was doing. I got a message on my cell phone voicemail saying, asking the guy to call him back, and he told me when I called him back, and I just remember coming out of the room and screaming and scaring the hell out of my mom and dad, or my mom and her boyfriend Aaron, sorry, and almost gave them a heart attack. And my kids didn't know what was going on. My husband knew exactly what was going on. He guessed, yeah. He saw me go in the other room, and he's like, I'll pinch you. And so it was a great moment.
I'm sure. Yeah, how exactly does the nomination process at the National Cartoon Society work? Because I've been trying to find out information on that, and it's actually fairly difficult to come by. What's the process behind there?
Well, the NCS is divided into different divisions, so like regions, I should say.
Right.
So the region I'm from is the Great Lakes chapter. Mm-hmm. So every region is in charge of the going over each division of nominees. So, for instance, I think Great Lakes was in charge of newspaper comic strips a couple of years ago, okay. And so they would get together and vote, and it's a whole afternoon, a whole process. And there are other categories like newspaper illustration, panel cartoons, and so each region kind of rotates every year. So one year Great Lakes might do newspaper comic strips, the next year they might do newspaper illustration, another year they might not do anything because I think there are more regions than there are divisions, categories. So I can't remember which region was in charge of newspaper comic strips this year, but I'm happy.
Obviously.
Yeah, I'm happy, and I'm in good company with the other nominees too. So
I know Leo's one of the other nominees. One of my
Right.
favorites in 2012. It's going to be a good year. Best of luck.
Thanks. I know that's tough going up against Mark Tertulli. So yeah, and actually, the other woman is Isabella Bannerman, who's also King Features.
She's part of the Six Chicks.
She is. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who are interested in picking up or reading more of your stuff, or getting T-shirts, mugs, and pajamas too, correct?
Correct.
You can all get this stuff on the Pajama Diaries website, including Pajama Diaries Having It All and No Time to Do It, and of course Bat-Zilla, which I just covered. Is there anything else I forgot to mention?
No, these are my 2 new books. They just came out in the past year, and well, I do have another book where the kids are a little younger that's called Pajama Diaries Deja To Do, and this one is where it's a little more updated and the kids are a little older, so just more recent strips.
And they're going to keep aging as time goes on?
They are. They age it. Yep, they age up every year.
So it is a real-time progression then?
It is. It is.
It took Luann, I know, 25 years or so to go from middle to high school, but this isn't like that?
No, they shoot up. It's a little more along the lines of For Better or For Worse, where they keep it just keeps I think it keeps my writing fresher that way, just personally. So
No, I totally agree. It keeps things out of a deadlock, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
All right, perfect. Let's talk a little crazy here.
Okay.
Let's say that Pajama Diaries was picked up by Hollywood or NBC or one of the other studios and was slated to go on as a movie or a TV show. Who would you cast as the cast of Pajama Diaries?
I know exactly who I'd cast because as a couple years after I developed the strip, a TV show came along, and I'm like, oh my god! It's The Middle. Have you ever seen it?
I have not.
It's a great show. And I just stare at the TV sometimes and say, yeah, that's it right there. So, yeah, it's the parents definitely just remind me so much of ourselves. Patricia Heaton plays Frankie, the mom, and it's sort of her outlook too, and her voice, and I can't remember the name of the actor who plays Mike, the dad, but he was the janitor from Scrubs.
Oh, okay. Right. Another show I'm not familiar with, but even still, the janitor has sort of crept into my pop culture awareness. Just
Love the janitor.
I got friends of mine who are huge Scrubs fans. They keep trying to push the show on me all the time. I don't have time.
You should watch it. That's my all-time favorite.
I will put it on my massive to-do list. I will.
It's a great show. Yeah, my husband, I quote from it all the time.
So basically, if you could just take the middle and just rewrite the title card to read the Pajama Diaries.
Seriously.
That would work?
Yeah. At first I was kind of mad when I saw it. Like, hey! But no, now I just love the show. And it's a great connection that I've got.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
And on that same lines, if you had to choose a theme song for the Pajama Diaries that you would use in the TV show or the movie, what would that song be?
I came across a song a while ago called, it's actually a parody song called In the Motherhood, and it's a rap song, and it's great, and yeah. And it has a video to go with it.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Terry, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was a pleasure having you here. That's all we have for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, I'm your comic strip critic, and I read the funny pages in search of comics like the Pajama Diaries. See you next time.
To get some rest. Spent 3 months in PJs, it was clearly a sign. Joined a book club just so I could drink some wine. My sterilizer's so dope, all my bottles be gleaming. I got a blender at the back so I can start a weaning. It's a motherhood, it's another hood. And once you're in the club, you're in for good. Go from fighting happy rush to endless doctor queues. And I'm flooding up your timeline with my baby news. more G than your average mother. I'm a school run taker, fairy cake baker, deal maker, orgasm faker, knit raker, rattle shaker, cheese grater, nighttime waker. I'm in her cater, peacemaker.